Moving to file item 41, Senator De Leon, not at this desk. File item 42, Senator Jackson. Secretary, please read.
Senate Bill 406 by Senator Jackson, an act relating to employment.
Senator Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. Yesterday on this floor, at the introduction of our day, Senator Gaines, if I may, introduced his family. And I don't know about you, but I was deeply moved by the clear love and affection that he expressed for his extraordinary family, particularly his mother, the first woman to be ordained as an Episcopal minister, priest, back in the early 80s, and a family that is clearly loving, caring, and so united and nurturing of each other. And I recall a conversation I had with an uncle of mine who was trying to have his second heart bypass surgery, which was not successful, and he passed away. He was a very, very successful businessman. And he said, I'm here probably on my deathbed, and I find that my regret is not that I didn't spend enough time at the office, but that I didn't spend enough time with my family. And I've never forgotten that. And as we look today, and as we as adults consider our lives, and I think almost everyone in this room has a family, loves their family, wishes only the best for their families, and will do everything they can to make their families' lives easier, I bring before you today a very small effort to do just that. This is SB 406. Now, this measure does the following two things. It extends the definition of what a family is for purposes of taking unpaid family leave to care for a very ill loved one or oneself. 12 weeks of unpaid family leave now could include caring for a grandchild, an in-law, a grandparent, or a close family member. That's the first thing it does. The second thing this bill does is it says if you are a business of 50 or more, that has already been available, except for the expanded definition. This will simply say if you are an employer of 25 or more, you have to provide this option to your employees to take up to 12 weeks of unpaid family leave and assures that you'll have your job back when you return. Now let's think about this for a second. This does not cost the employer 1 cent. It is unpaid. It is up to 12 weeks. When would someone have that kind of emergency situation? Well, if it's with a loved one, it may very well be because you have a grandparent or a parent who is going through their last illness, and you are the only caregiver they can have. Or a grandchild, because you've become a second or a surrogate parent, or perhaps the grandparent who is actually raising a grandchild. All it says is if you take up to 12 weeks, you will be able to be sure that that job is available to you when you get back. Now, the irony is there are very few people who can afford to take 12 weeks of unpaid leave. Most people, in fact, who have available to them paid or unpaid family leave take a total of 10 days, 2 weeks, because frankly, they can't afford not to be working and being paid for that work. That's what this bill does. This is such a modest effort that I'm almost embarrassed that's all this bill does. You know, most countries in the world not only have unpaid family leave, they have paid family leave for up to weeks and months, whether it's to bond with a child, whether it's to take care of a loved one. Companies from Australia to China to New Zealand to most of the countries in Europe. This bill doesn't even ask for that. It just says if you need to take 12 weeks of unpaid leave to care for a sick one, and there is a doctor's letter requirement here. This isn't the kind of thing people do because they want to go take a long vacation or a walk along my oily beaches. This is something people do because they basically have no other choice. And because this is a bill that tries to strengthen family bonds and tries to allow people to actually be family members and care for the people they love, this is one of those bills that is a priority for the Women's Caucus. It is my hope that it is a priority for all of us here on this floor. And with that, I would ask for your aye vote.
Members, debate or discussion on this item. Senator Stone.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the Senate. I want to compliment the author. This is a very well-intentioned bill, but I must unfortunately rise to oppose it. I have been a small businessman now for 34 years, and while I don't have 25 employees yet in my compounding pharmacy, I'm working towards that goal, and I'm getting close. But let me say this, that the people that work in my pharmacy are very technical, educated, qualified people. Pharmacy technicians, and not only get a license to become pharmacy technicians, but have to be at further training to learn how to compound very dangerous drugs if they're not compounded appropriately. If I have one of my employees that says, I'm taking 12 weeks off, I've got to find somebody to replace that employee, and I can tell you that the pool of qualified people to perform that task is very, very challenging and will put a significant strain on my remaining employees. And when you're dealing with people's lives with preparations that you're making, it can be a very challenging experience. Now, there is significant opposition to this bill. The California Chamber of Commerce, yet another job killer bill. Air Conditioning Trades Association, Associated Builders and Contractors, Associated General Contractors, California Association of Health Services, Manufacturers and Technology Association, California Pool and Spa. These are the guys that go around and clean our pools, and they have to find people to replace them so they can satisfy the contracts to keep our pools clean so that we don't have issues, with diseases. California Professional Associations of Specialty Contractors, California Restaurant Association, California State Association of Counties. Many of us were local elected officials in counties, Family Business Association, Farmers League, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Another job-killing bill, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, employers are compassionate people. I'm a compassionate guy. If I have somebody that needs some time off for a very important reason, I'm going to do anything and everything in my power to try to help that employee. But I shouldn't be mandated to do it. Employers are mandated to do way too much outside the responsibilities of their employees and their obligation to be an employee to make sure that business is successful. Complying with the California Family Rights Act is already hard enough for big employers and large human resource departments. A lot of small businesses don't have HR departments to manage these kinds of things. And what this bill will do, my friends, it is going to trigger more frivolous litigation. It's going to put another nail in the coffin on our business climate, which we all know is deplorable in the state of California, ranking at the bottom of all states. Now we want to pass that burden on to small businesses, of which I'm one, who can barely stay afloat as it is. Small businesses today operate on very thin margins, especially when you take into consideration new bills coming out of this legislature that may in fact become laws, the new minimum wage laws, and the many other mandates that are being placed on businesses. A mandate such as this could put businesses on the tipping point that forces them to shut down. And what good is that going to do these hard-working employees that need those jobs to feed their families and to pay their mortgages, to pay their insurance, to pay their highest workman's comp in the country? This bill imposes unique, overly burdensome mandates on California employers that do not exist in other states and will not exist in other states because they're the beneficiaries of our business-unfriendly practices that are driving the businesses out of state. We've lost, I've mentioned this before, significant large employers have left the state, not coming back. Now the small businesses are going to be courted, and this is just another reason to give small businesses a reason to leave the state of California. It places California businesses at a competitive disadvantage, and it sends the wrong messages to businesses looking to establish or expand here. For these reasons, I ask passionately in the best interest of small businesses that exist in all of our districts that want government to just get out of their way. Let them be the compassionate employers that they probably want to be. I urge a no vote on this.
Thank you, Senator Stone. Senator Liu?
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in support of SB 406. It's an important step in recognizing the caregiving needs of the California workforce. Family caregivers caregiving is a major challenge for millions of Californians. Currently, over 6 million Californians are providing unpaid care for family members, for a friend. 1/3 of all California households contain at least one caregiver. But according to the study by the Alzheimer's Association, nearly 40% of family members aren't covered under the narrow definition of the California Family Rights Act. As our population continues to age, we are going to rely more and more on family caregivers to provide critical care and services. This is an important small step in helping California families effectively balance family and career demands, and it's a priority, again, as the author of the bill states, of the Women's Caucus.
Thank you, Senator Liu. Senator Mitchell?
Thank you, Mr. President. I think I'm always fascinated by the notion of what constitutes a job killer bill. And I'm intrigued by that because there are a couple of national periodicals that produce lists every year of across business spectrum, large business, medium, small. And the question is, what's the best company to work for? And it's a common list of criteria of how employees define the best company to work for. And when you look at this list, as we would all appreciate as workers, it's companies who are sympathetic to the needs of their employee. And so what even trumps compensation year after year on these lists defining the best company to work for are family-friendly policies. Policies that employers, businesses, regardless of size, put in place that acknowledge the realities, what it takes for us to come to work every day, be focused, attentive, to do a job well done. And you can't do that when your house is not in order. And if you're a sandwich generation member, which most of both baby boomers and the millennials are now becoming, everyone has a situation at home, be it an elderly parent, be it a child with child care, everybody has a situation. And so as we talk about job killer, I think it's important that we look at these national surveys where workers talk about the best companies to work for. I, too, was an employer of a 500-employee large organization before I ran for public office. I was amazed when I got to that agency as the first non-founder CEO to find that there were a number of employees who were founding employees of this organization. And so I went around my first month or so on the new job and asked, why are you still here? It's a nonprofit organization. There have been peaks and valleys. There have been times when you didn't get a COLA, you didn't get an increase. Why are you here? And they said things like, because the two founders, who happened to be women, fundamentally understood what they needed as employees, that they felt a part of a corporate culture that acknowledged the reality they face as adults. And so as a nonprofit organization, we understood it was important to have family-friendly policies so that our workforce remained committed to us in good times and bad. Small businesses are clear that to remain competitive in this current market and to attract the best and the brightest in whatever the field they have, they've got to compete on a level beyond simply salary. So why in 2015 we're still debating the value of a corporate culture that acknowledges the needs of everyday workers is really puzzling to me. When workers year after year acknowledge what is most important to them, what gets them to show up and come to work every day is in many instances beyond salary, but an acknowledgement of the kind of supports they need and to be functioning contributors of our society. On this very floor, we also debate the value of supporting programs like early care and education or in-home supportive services. So what are we willing to pay for? If we're not willing to pay for others to take care of folks in need, then we're also not going to support family members to take a few extra days off work to take care of their families in need. I'm not quite sure how we argue both sides of that coin. To that end, I'm proud to be a member of the Women's Caucus and stand in support, as the Women's Caucus always has, of issues around family leave, and I support SB 406.
Thank you, Senator Mitchell. Senator McGuire, followed by Senator Morell and Senator Leyva.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. I just want to take a quick moment to say a few brief comments on this legislation. First of all, I want to thank the senator for bringing this important issue before all of us today. We are all grateful to be able to represent the districts that we do, and I'm grateful to be able to represent the North Coast of Northern California, which is one of the most rural districts in our state. And unfortunately, I must point out that the North Coast is still recovering from the Great Recession. And in fact, rural areas across the state are tracking behind urban areas when it comes to unemployment. And on the North Coast, unemployment numbers run higher than most areas throughout California. And small businesses, particularly in the North Coast, are struggling to be able to keep their businesses afloat and continue to provide critical jobs in the region. And the majority of employers along the North Coast are small business owners, as those once thriving industries that were moving in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s now have disappeared. I say all this is because I do believe that this bill is a continued work in progress, and had the opportunity to be able to have conversations with the author. And I know that she is committed to continue to work. I know I'm going to have continued conversations with local business folks, manufacturers, those that are in the timber industry, and local chambers. And I'm going to be voting on the bill today with the understanding that details of the legislation still need to be ironed out, and reserve the right to take this item back up when it makes it back to our House. And again, I want to say thank you to the author for bringing this forward, and know that this is a work in progress, and we'll be tracking this carefully. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Senator McGuire. Senator Morell.
Thank you, Madam President and members this day. You know, there's a difference between large, big businesses and small business owners. There's approximately 700,000 small business owners in California, which employ approximately 16 million people, and that number is going down on small businesses. And I think the reason why is a lot of compliance and regulations handcuff and zap the spirit of the entrepreneur here in California. I know I was a small business owner, and I opened my business on a shoestring. And at one time, I was a CFO, the CEO, the bookkeeper, the janitor, or as my young son used to say, call yourself a custodian. It sounds more professional, but I did all those things. A number of days I worked till 11 at night and got up at 4 in the morning just to break even. And so, I mean, it is very tough here in California. The good news, I was fortunate things got better as the years went on. But I tell you, now, if I was to start my business over again, just with so many regulations and more burdens being added on, again, I would have to probably maybe take a pass, because it's very difficult in this state. And that's why there's a great book which was handed to me by the Hoover Institute. It's a think tank off the campus of Stanford, entitled How Money Walks. And it just talks about small business people and where they're taking their money. And they're going to the path of least resistance. They're going to Arizona, which the top tax rate is 4.6%. And they're going to states like Nevada, which has no state income tax, and of course Texas, where there's no state income tax and regulations. They work to sunset many of these things. So it is a challenge here to do business. I've walked in those shoes, and I do understand why some of the statistics that I've read in California, between 80 and 85% of small businesses actually fail here. So I would not support this bill, and I would encourage you to do the same. so our state grows and helps the small business owner. Thank you.
Senator Leyva.
Thank you, Madam President. First, colleagues, I would like to echo the comments of my female colleague from Los Angeles, but I would also like to say today that we cannot have it both ways on this carpet. We cannot say one thing and vote against a bill. Yesterday, if I'm reading my scorecard correctly, a bill was introduced, SB 398, by myself, which would help small businesses up and down the state of California to make sure that they could access cap and trade funds and participate like big businesses. And if I'm looking at my scorecard correctly, the good senator from Temecula and the good senator from Rancho Cucamonga both voted against the bill. But yet today,
Excuse me, Ms. Senator Morrell, you might want to go to your desk, raise your mic, and I'd be happy to recognize you at that point.
but I heard his
From
question.
the sidelines.
And I didn't
hang on
use
one
anyone's
second,
name.
Senator, hang on one second.
Order.
Point of order. You're recognized, Senator Morrell.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I am grateful for that. I understand yesterday that there is to be no reference made to anybody on this floor unless if it's permission through the dais. Am I correct on that, or did I miss?
I know, I try.
What's that?
For clarification for the entire body, Mason's Manual 112, and there's a copy here if anyone would like to review it, states that no one can be referenced by name. What I heard the senator say referenced gender and a geographic area. And so I don't think her statement was a violation of the rule.
Well, thank you for your clarification.
You are more than welcome. Senator Leyva, you can continue.
Thank you, Madam President. Let me repeat, we cannot have it both ways. I stand in strong support of this bill. You cannot vote against a bill that will help small business and then get up the next day and vote against a bill because it's going to harm small business. So I would just ask all of us to decide what it is that we really want to do here. We want business to be successful in California. There's no doubt about that. But we also want to make sure that the workers who are making those businesses successful can take care of their families. So let's just get our priorities straight. I urge an aye vote on this measure. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Allen.
I just wanted to rise and particularly associate myself with the comments of the senator from Sonoma County, Healdsburg, I believe. I think he did an excellent job of articulating both my reasons for supporting this bill, but also my deep concerns that have been expressed on the floor relating to the economy, its pace, the fact that this bill does seek to lower the threshold of number of employees per company, and that a lot of the small and medium-sized businesses that are out there are struggling to survive and compete in this difficult economic environment. All that being said, I also understand that we're quite a far ways behind a lot of our competitor nations when it comes to the provision of family leave. Certainly, businesses have found a way to make this work in other states and other countries. And so I certainly do hope that the author will work very closely with some of the key stakeholders, including those folks in the business community, to make sure that this is something that's going to work for people on all levels of our economy.
Thank you. Senator Hernandez, followed by Senator Anderson.
Thank you, Madam President, members. I'd like to speak on this issue in support as a small business owner. So to give you a little perspective, when I graduated from optometry school in 1986, my wife and I decided to open our first practice in the city of La Puente. And we've been in small business and been self-employed since that time. And it's kind of funny because the only time I really had a real job where I actually had to put in my Social Security numbers when I got a job here. It's the first time I actually got a paycheck. So I understand what it is to write a check to employees, to have overhead, to deal with overregulation. And if you want to talk about an industry that is overregulated, it's the healthcare industry. We're talking about, I mean, the good senator from Sacramento shaking his head. I can't say his name, but but our profession is the most overregulated profession in the world from HIPAA. And if you want to talk about poor reimbursement rates, they're only getting worse, okay? But I'll tell you, since being in business since the mid-'80s, I've gone through a variety of economic ups and downs. There's been recessions, there's been good times. But what I've learned about being a good business person is how to control my overhead, but more importantly, how to make sure we can make it through tough economic times. Now, I'm going to get to the reason why I stay in California a little bit later, but let me tell you, the success of our business in the absolute worst times of the economy are my employees. I have employees who have been with me for decades, the longest since I started, the average 15 to 18 years. And it's because, I hope it's because I pay them okay, but it's more importantly because the way I treat them and the culture that we've created. And what I've made my absolute highest priority is to allow them to have time off when something happens. And unfortunately, I have to juggle, you know, their schedules. But to me, the most valuable asset that I have as a business owner are my employees. Because if my employees were gone, I'd be out of a business in a heartbeat. In a heartbeat. And when I see patients, I'm in the back, and my employees are a reflection of who I am. So I'm going to stand in support of this issue because I believe that what we have to do is make sure that we make it the most friendly environment and make sure that we create a culture for employees. Now, I will say I do have a concern, and I've talked to the author about it, and one of my concerns is, as was mentioned by, I forgot where he's from, Sonoma, okay. One of the concerns I do have is an eventual private right of action. And I've talked to the author about it, and we're gonna talk about it because I think that can go beyond, and I think that could create a problem. But other than that, I am supportive. Now, I'm gonna close with this. And I normally don't get up and speak on issues, but I felt that I should on this one. The reason why I stay in California and the reason why I put up with all of the regulations and the reason why I get poor reimbursement rates and stay in this great state is because of that, because it's an incredible state. And I could not imagine going anywhere else. And that's why everybody else comes to the state of California. It is the greatest state in the union. And with that, members, I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Thank you, Senator. And Senator Anderson.
I agree with the notion of the bill. Of course we care about our workers. Of course we want people to grow and foster families and family ties. That's the social backbone of our state and our people. But I think that we have to take in consideration a few other items. You see, everyone says, oh, I can't wait to be a fat cat business owner. You get boss people around, tell them what to do. Sit back, smoke a cigar, and just count the money as it rolls through the door. But if you've ever owned a business, you know how it really works? You work for your employees. You see, when you have a small company and you have fewer than 25 employees and the receptionist doesn't show up, you greet everybody at the door. When your driver doesn't show up, you drive the product all over the county. When the machine operator doesn't show up, you run the machine. Because in many instances, it's your name on that door, and you've made commitments to your customers, and they're relying on you. And you care about the quality that you produce, the quality of the work that you produce, and you care about what people think about your business, and what they think about your employees, and what they think about you. And the last thing that you want people to hear in the marketplace is that you don't care about your employees, that you're willing to step on a person to get ahead. That's just not the way it goes. If you have the flexibility to work with that employee, of course you're going to give them that opportunity. You know why? Because that employee is going to be grateful to you, and they're going to want to come to work, and you're going to work at a place that you're, one, proud of, and two, that you enjoy being at, because you're surrounded by people that love to be there. Nobody stays in business for any length of time by mistreating their employees, because that's the most valuable person in your business. But let's not forget, not everybody has a 9-to-5 job. You know, you've got farmers who have a season, and when that season comes in, if they don't harvest, they don't get paid, and that worker won't have a job to return to. You see, if we mandate this, the employer and the employee lose the flexibility of long-term jobs. And what I'm worried about is I've worked in an industry where it had a season, and I might only gross $5,000 a month for 8 months, but in a short window of 3 or 4 months, my business may be doing $2 or $3 million worth of work. And I keep that employee on the payroll all that time because they're a quality employee, and I want to ensure that they have my back when we go into this season where we reap and sow. And unfortunately, if that's the time when they leave, I don't know that I can promise a future job to them because I don't know if I have a future business. And I think that when we take that away from the employer and we just assume that every employer is a mean-spirited person that wants to step on his employees, I think that's the wrong way to go. You know, we've heard testimony from senators on the floor that have had the experience of signing the front of checks. And the first thing they started with was how they value their employees and how they bend over backwards and how they have long-term employees. Let's not discount people who are doing the right thing and put their businesses in jeopardy. Let's encourage it. If this was a resolution in support, encouraging more employers to step up and lift their employees and show their gratitude for their hard work, I easily support that. But I don't want to put some people out of business so that their employees suffer, so the workers suffer because they don't have the same options for jobs. You know, we extended the family leave, and I think that's terrific. But in my little state office, having 2 or 3 women or men out on a pregnancy leave, I don't get to replace those workers. I have to work shorthanded. And you know what happens? The people that work with them resent the fact that they're having to do their work in addition to their own work. And I think that we have to be careful about the ripple effect of what we're doing and how we do it. Let's encourage people to be the best that they can be, the best employer there can be. But let's not be so rigid that we steal jobs from workers, that we steal employers from the marketplace. For those reasons, I can't support this bill today, but I certainly want to support the workers, and I certainly want to make sure that we foster strong homes and strong family bonds.
Thank you. Senator Bates.
Thank you, Madam President. I've been asked to be very brief, and I will try to do that in a couple bullets. As a small business owner, I think there are 3 things wrong with the bill. It's a mandate and a cookie cutter, and it really attacks our goals to have job creation and really lift people out of poverty by providing those job opportunities. We own an architectural firm. We produce projects on a very, very short timeline, and if you don't get those out and you work in teams, you have the design team, the drafting team, you have a CAD team with a lot of the design going on now with technology. One person missing from that team when you have a deadline, you can fail to meet the deadline and then you lose the job. When you lose the job, you have no other choice but to lay that particular individual on that team off because no new jobs come. So bear in mind, this is about small business. Let's not call it a job killer. Let's call it an impact on small business, that small business killer. And let us remember the economic engine of this nation and this state is small business, and the majority of them are run by women. So this can be considered anti-women if that's another one of our goals as women to eradicate in this state. So please consider those things. Mandates really don't work as well as incentives. I'm a psych major, and you all know from the studies that have been done on human behavior, reward is much more effective in changing behavior than punishment. It lasts much longer. Let's give some rewards instead of constant punishments to the people who are producing jobs that are so essential, once again, to accomplish our goals of removing the rest of the people that we know, not like us, that are suffering in this state and on the edges, if not in poverty.
Thank you. Senator Jackson, please close.
Thank you very much. Very interesting discussion. I would like to also let you know I was a small business person. This isn't just unique to our friends on the other side of the aisle. As you heard, many of us here, and I look to my colleagues, I think almost all of us at one point or another have been small business people. So we understand this issue. But let's also understand what the definition is of small business. This measure talks about employers with 25 employees or more. Not the mom and pop shop, not the 3 to 4 to 5 employees. We are talking about businesses of 25 or more people. That represents, by the way, only 6% of the businesses will be affected by this law. Back in 2002, when the first Paid Family Leave Act was passed in California, our dear friends at the Chamber, although I think I can use that name, and others who oppose this bill, thought the sky was going to fall and California was going to go the way of Somalia, and everyone was going to leave the state. But in fact, there's been research done on that measure, which is much more, I would say, expansive to the extent that an individual can take paid leave. Of course, they pay for the right to take paid leave because it's money that comes out of the employee's own pocket. But in fact, research has shown that businesses do not suffer when workers have when they have paid leave. This is unpaid leave we're talking about now. In fact, all the available research, and I think it's confirmed by what my colleague, the optometrist from Los Angeles, said a few minutes ago, is that when you treat your employees well, they will stay with you. And while it would be wonderful if all employers had that same level of compassion and understanding, then we could do carrots. But the fact is that that is not the case. And so this is legislation which sets parameters. And I would also like to tell my good friend and colleague, the optometrist from Los Angeles, that this measure calls for any complaints to go through an administrative proceeding first, where 95% or more of the concerns are articulated in a more collaborative basis and resolved. So, and I will continue to work on that. I understand that concern, and I appreciate it being raised. But the fact of the matter is that we have seen in California, in spite of all the dire predictions about how we're over-regulated, we're over this and we're over that, we still have had more job growth in this country post-recession than any other state in the country. So we must be doing something right. And I suggest that what we are doing right is we are acknowledging to the workers and to the innovators that this is a state that cares about its people. And we are going to make this a place where we can have a jobs and life balance. That's all this bill does in a very, very small measure. Tries to acknowledge and create that jobs-life balance by giving people the opportunity, when they work for an employer who has 25 or more employees, an opportunity to bond with a child, to take care of a sick grandparent or a sick grandchild, to be able to do that and to be assured that at the end of that difficult, traumatic experience that they have had to undergo to care for their loved ones, they will have a job waiting for them when they return. This bill does not cost an employer one dime. It is unpaid leave. And with that, I would ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Allen? Anderson? Bates? No. Bell? Aye. Berryhill? No. Block. I. Canella. No. De Leon. Fuller. No. Gaines. No. Galgiani. I. Glazer. No. Hall. I. Hancock. I. Hernandez. I. Hertzberg. I. Hill. Wesso. Huff. Jackson. I. Latta. Leno. Leyva. I. Liu. I. McGuire. I. Mendoza. I. Mitchell. I. Monning. I. Morlock. No. Morrell. No. Wynn. No. Nielsen. No. Pan. I. Pavley. I. Roth. Runner. No. Stone. No. Vidak. No. Wykowski. I. Wolk. Wolk, aye. Anderson, no.
Please call the absent members.
Allen, aye. Hill. Wesso. Huff. Latta. Leno. De Leon. Aye. Roth. No.
Please call the absent members.
Hill. Wesso. Huff. No. Latta. Leno.
Please call the absent members.
Hill. Aye. Wesso. Latta. Leno.
Ayes 21, no 16. The measure passes.